Welcome everyone to another episode of the Option Menu Crew podcast. This is episode 39. Your crew members today are myself, Ryan, and with me today is also Ed. How you doing, Ed?
Good, good. We're coming up on the end of the year. This is going to be one of our last episodes for 2021. I can't believe how fast the year went.
Yeah, in some ways it went too fast, in other ways it didn't go fast enough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna do one of our normal topics this episode. Then the next one we're gonna do Game of the Year episode, and we're just giving people a heads up. We're gonna take a break, so we're just kind of gonna skip. I guess it would be like 4 weeks till the next episode or something like that. We'll figure out the exact timing, bring that up. But yeah, New Year's holiday, we just figured it'd be a good idea to just take a break and not have to worry about this. But yeah, Game of the Year episode, and then we'll be back after like one set of episodes. Or
Yeah,
yeah,
wouldn't the time we normally record it put us on like New Year's? Yeah, I
yeah,
think it would be New Year's Day is when we're choosing to skip, and I think that's a good choice.
yeah. And what's also perfect about that is that means our listeners will get the Game of the Year episode literally on the first of the new year. So
Oh yeah, that's true.
you people can look for.
It's almost like we planned it.
I know, right? It just worked out really nicely. So that'll be up for people to listen to, and then that will mean we didn't record, so that will skip there, and then we'll figure out how to time that, because that actually puts us in a weird place with timing. Because I think it'd be like 6 weeks then would be like the weird off.
Yeah, this is the first time in a long while that we're not going to be recording bi-weekly.
Yeah, and it's important. We're got to take the break. We got to do the holiday stuff. We want to spend time with our families, our friends, take the break for ourselves. It's just good. I think I'm really proud of what we've accomplished so far. I think it's been a lot of fun. I think we've talked about a lot of good stuff here, and I'm looking forward to continuing it, and maybe taking it in some new directions depending on what we feel like.
Yeah, I'm surprised with you know, how much I guess I shouldn't be surprised with how much there is to talk about. There's a million people on the internet always talking about video games, so it must be an interesting topic, but
I
we
remember,
we
yeah,
we've come up with some good ones.
I remember when we were first like being like, "Are we going to do this?" And you were like a little bit like, "I don't know. Are we really going to have something to talk about?" I'm like, "Dude, I have this huge list." And you're like, "I don't know," but to your credit, like you've gotten on these episodes, and most of them, if not all of them, with me, and you've gotten you'd get into the topic like, "Wow, there's so much more I want. I didn't realize I wanted to talk
Yeah,
about
we
with
have to we
this."
have to cut ourselves short just to make editing not be a day-long process.
Yeah, we're as we've mentioned before, like with the monetization series of episodes and other stuff. In this one, we haven't figured out if we're going to label it monetization, but it feels like it ties in a lot to that. So you'll by listeners, you'll find out when you get the episode whether or not we titled it. But we're going to talk about demos, trials, and rentals today for video games, like how trying a game before you buy it works and all that. And we've definitely touched on it a ton in previous episodes. But this one we wanted to really focus in on that whole idea, because games are like a thing you got to play. And let's touch on this, because the one way that a lot of people nowadays are figuring out whether or not they like a video game is watching videos. YouTube, Twitch, and all the other services out there where you can see video clips of people playing video games. It's part of the experience, and to some it is a very important experience. But I feel like with video, there's still that element where you haven't played it, and the to get the maximum amount of effect from a video about like how a game plays, you need to have played a bunch of games. You need to have that experience inside you. So when you see something, and when the player, whether it's the YouTuber, the streamer, excuse me, that's the word, is playing and describing things, you're able to understand what that means and what that feels like. And that's even like in game reviews as well. But game reviews are not live, and of course, game reviews are getting more video elements or video counterparts as well. So that is one way to do that. But like Ed, where's your head at with like videos for like for figuring out whether or not to like the games? Like what do you do? Do you use video?
Yes, sometimes. I'm trying to think of like the games I played this year. Did I actually watch reviews on them?
Mhm.
And I'd say like a good point. I think we're gonna go over this in the game of the year, but I had Neo: The World Ends With You, I had Psychonauts 2, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Metroid Dread. I don't think I watched any video reviews on any of those because I kind of like knew what I those I knew enough going into at least. I don't think I played a demo either of any of those. If I know there was one available for The World Ends With You, but um, yeah, I don't always look up a review. Sometimes if it's a game I'm not familiar with, I do. Um, but I've honestly found that some of my favorite games were ones that like I went into not knowing much about and only like came up on my. I mean, this is kind of like I know we're kind of going against the idea of trying games before you buy, but this is my experience. That sometimes even the my favorite games have been ones I didn't know anything about. So I almost tend to go on a hunch, but that hunch isn't always right. And I maybe could stand to try some games and do a little more research.
Ri
But
Yeah.
I do watch video reviews sometimes, but actually not that much this year, I would say. I'll watch like pre-release coverage. Like if it's I might watch a trailer or some gameplay, but I don't. And I might like look at the review aggregate like on Metacritic or something, or just I'm curious what it scored, and I'll look at some blurbs, but like little descriptions at the top of reviews. But I don't think I read too many in-depth reviews or watch them, at least not recently.
What about, like, when streamers play a game? How can you recall any situations where you watched a streamer play a game you were interested in, or ended up watching a streamer that ended up playing a game, because you like the streamer and you got interested in the game, like something post-release, or even if they had, like, pre-release coverage, as can happen occasionally?
I don't generally watch streamers play games. I don't use Twitch. I think I have a Twitch account, maybe. I don't remember. I
Mm.
have an Amazon account. I guess if I have an Amazon account, I probably have a Twitch account, right? Or I
No.
could. No, is it different?
Yeah, they're different, but you can
Okay,
merge them.
well,
You can
I don't
link
think
them.
I don't think I have a Twitch account. I do watch this one YouTuber stream, but he usually just streams like whatever the heck he feels like. I
Yeah.
mean, like it's not. It's. I think at one point he streamed Metroid Dread, but this guy is just like terrible with directions. So he was running around in circles for like 20 minutes. It was hilarious,
Mm.
but it was not helpful in determining whether or not the game was good because he made it look bad.
Mm, mhm, mhm.
So, um,
Yeah, and so I guess I wanna ask, 'cause, so we're
I mean, do you watch a lot of video reviews, or I know you like to watch streamers more than I do.
so that's where, like, you and I differ in an interesting way, but we're also kinda similar. So, I check out a lot of pre-release media to determine whether or not I'm interested in the game, and I'll know whether or not I like if I'm into a series, I usually know what I'm expecting, and I'm looking for information to understand if I'm gonna be playing it or not. And then I I've played so many games at this point that I have a good understanding of, based on just reading things or hearing things, whether or not I'll like something. And then if I feel still iffy about it, that's where I go into, like, you know what? And I've adopted this mode because also pre-release stuff and material isn't always as honest as it needs to be, or should be, I should say. So I'm more in the mindset now of, unless I'm absolutely certain it's something I want to play or whatnot, I will opt to try it in some regard, whether that's a demo, a trial, or renting it. So and definitely when there's things where I want to, like, experiment, I'm trying to go outside my comfort zone a little bit with trying things I haven't tried before. There's certain genres I'm just never really gonna revisit that I'm sure of, that it's just like RTS and turn-based tactical games. Like, I've played a couple of them over the years for, like, reasons, because, like, their brand recognition. Like, I've played Final Fantasy Tactics. I'm like, ugh, this is weird. And then I did play through and I beat, and this is more because of just the brand loyalty of, I played Final Fantasy 12 Revenant Wings on DS.
I
Um,
never played that. I know it is. I know what it is though, but
yeah, I
was it
should.
Was it fun, or did you not like it?
I shouldn't have wasted my time with that game. I didn't really care about the story that much. The gameplay was fine. I'm not an RTS fan, so I can't truly judge it. But for me, I'm like, I played it, I beat it, I kind of did it for the story. It's a Final Fantasy game, and it was okay. I would never play it again. I wouldn't. I would tell someone if you're into RTS, maybe check it out. But that's about it. But then there's there's other games where I'm like, you know what? I feel like I've heard something really interesting about this. I want to try it. And there's a whole bunch of like indie games and stuff that's out there. Some of like walking sim type games, which I don't dislike them. I just think that some of them it's like will it click more or less or whatnot. So I'm like, I'll try some of these more experimental indie games to see, and I don't want to fully commit because if it's bad. So perfect example. 12 minutes. I forget exactly why. Oh, I started seeing Twitter impressions of like, it doesn't quite stick the landing. And I'm like, really? This is weird. Like, it seemed like so interesting. I was so into like the concept and what was there. And then I watched a streamer and I'm like, let's see. Also, it was on Game Pass, so I really had no reason not to play it. But I was just like, I don't know. So I watched the whole thing and I ended up realizing like, there was like one or two puzzles that were a little too tricky where I'm like, okay, this part of the design wasn't as good as it should have been. And then I get to the end of the story and I hit all the story beats and I came to agree. I'm like, you know what? I loved everything except like the final story twist. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. And
Did they talk about this on one of the podcasts we listened to? Another one. I don't want to spoil this twist, but I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they
Kind
did.
of it was kind of unsavory.
Yeah, I had my reasons.
Okay.
I forget. I think I told it to you off mic before.
Yeah, I don't I don't want to spoil anything for
Absolutely
people
same. I'm not trying to spoil it. It didn't resonate with me. It's not like it's the most offensive. I just thought it didn't need to be the way it is, and it kind of and I don't always interpret things in the most critical eye, but then some other people who were more critical and had some stronger interpretations definitely went like, yeah, this is this can lead to some stuff here. So I just chose not to even play it on Game Pass. And the funny part is everything that game did gameplay wise, I thought was pretty neat. Because the core gameplay, not spoiling any plot details. It's basically a time loop thing. And it tells you that in the advertising. So there's nothing that's not a spoiler. This is a game that's kind of roguelike-ish. It's a very small contained environment. You're going to be looping through time in this one scenario over and over again, and you're just playing with events that can happen to try and get the sequences to occur in the way that will let you progress, get new information, even if it leads you to dead ends. Sometimes you have to go to a dead end in order to get enough information to actually progress to the next thing. And there's all sorts of different ways, and there's evolving dialogue. And it's just, I thought that aspect and that kind of puzzle solving for like a narrative focused video game is extremely engaging, extremely entertaining for me. Some of the puzzle designs may not resonate with everyone. That style of thing may not resonate with everyone. And like I said, the gameplay wise and mechanics, fine. Story wise, it is what killed it for me, and I just didn't feel like I needed to support that game. And I'm really torn because at the same time, I'm like, I want more stuff of this, but I want it better written. And I don't know, now knowing everything, I don't know how to feel. I would have just straight up bought it, which was my plan. I wasn't even going to just play it on Game Pass. I was going to buy it. Or I would have played it on Game Pass for probably like an hour, maybe at most. And it's like a 5-hour game, which is fine. Because there's a lot of trial and error that you got to do in order to figure some stuff out, which is fine. Some people may not like that, but that's basically what it is. And you usually get some new thing, whether it's a new interaction that leads to nothing, or there's new dialogue that will help you progress, and that will that can be interesting for some people. So I think it's extremely interesting. I'd love to see more games like that. I guess a better example of that for me, that on not such a grand scope, is like kind of like Disco Elysium. That one's like a huge like video game text adventure type thing. And I say text adventure, but it's not actually text adventure because there's graphics and everything. But
It's an RPG.
yeah,
There's stats,
there are stats.
there's skill checks and everything. It's a role playing game.
It's a role playing game, but it's super granular with its dialogue and options and scenario building. So
Yeah.
that's there's a big difference. Disco Elysium is like the open world version of this, and
Okay.
12 minutes is like a like indie version of this, and they're both indie games, but one is it's the scale. It's just the difference in scale.
Okay. I didn't know that I didn't know they were comparable.
In my opinion, they're comparable. I could see a debate where people would argue with me otherwise that it's not, because like you bring up the stats and things like that, and that could play into it. But I feel but the core of the game is this decision making, and this decision making through like dialogue choices and some actions. So like
Yeah.
it's much more refined than like, hey, this like there's not really combat. You know, neither game really has combat. Neither game is focused on like actions and QTEs and building out skill trees and stuff like. Although Disco Elysium does have some skill tree stuff. But I haven't yet committed to playing Disco Elysium yet. But I'm
I'd
highly
like to
intrigued.
play. I'd like to play it too.
Yeah.
It's definitely one that and that actually now that they added voice acting, it's like I love voice acting in games. It's hard for me to go back to games that are not like at least partially voiced. So that's a big draw. But that's beside the point.
I agree. I can definitely play games without voice acting. I come from that age from before times. And but I do prefer voice acting overall. But then again, it depends on the themes of the game. So I like, yeah, it can be very contextual, but in general, I do really enjoy voice acting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can be really tricky. So I don't really, if I hear about games and I find them interesting, you know, I'll put them on my Steam wish list. But then I'll seek out demos and trials and whatnot. So
So how do you generally hear about games? I don't. We may have discussed this in the past, but like discovery for you, to be able to try a game, you first need to know about it and even think it might be something that you might like.
um, I think you and I do it a lot the same way. It's just based on how much each of us pays attention to it. I'm just like on social media and the internet a lot of feeds, news feeds for it because I follow a bunch of video game websites and I have Twitter also feeding me headlines all the time. I've found it very useful also to follow PlayStation's. PlayStation and Nintendo both do this, but PlayStation I've had much more success with is just their YouTube feeds because they put up videos for new trailers and stuff outside of like their big E3 drops and whatnot. And I find out a lot about games, new games, especially indie games, from both of them, PlayStation and Nintendo, and both. And what I'll usually do is after I see a video for that, is I will then check if it's on Steam. If it's on Steam, I wishlist it on Steam. And if it's not, then I pay attention to it and I just kind of write it down on a little list and I'll check back on it. So yeah, there's that plus like streamers, podcasts, and whatnot. I hear about all sorts of different games that are coming up, and so that's a great way to do that and to hear people having played them talk about them. Sometimes they're old, sometimes they're new. You know, it depends the way the games media is. Especially if they're professional games media or trying to be on top of it. You know, they're playing a bunch of new stuff all the time. You rarely hear about like old gems or things that pass by, but every once in a while you do, and it's a great way to also pick up on other games. So that's usually how I hear about it. So, and I think you do most of the same.
Yeah, I'd say though my social media probably is more Reddit than Twitter. So I follow subreddits for platforms and
Yeah.
genres I'm interested in, and it's funny. Like the problem with following those kind of sources is you're not just hearing about new games, you're hearing about 4 decades of games you might not have played. So I'm like, oh, that game from 10 years ago, I might like that, but then a new game, it's never ending. Like it's I guess like I don't even need to be clued into all this stuff that much because it's not like I'm gonna run out of games that I might like.
No, and sometimes you find like a good game that actually takes a long time, and then of course combine that with life, throwing in different schedule changes,
And the new shiny coming out every other month, some new game that like, ooh, that game looks nice.
right. And I find it very good, and I'm trying to mix it up a little bit. As I said, I went backwards a little bit, and I don't remember if I said on the podcast, but I definitely said I played the Mass Effect Legendary Edition trilogy. I decided to go back because I love the original Mass Effect trilogy. I had missed out on some DLC in 2 and a bunch of DLC in 3. So I was like, oh, it's fully remastered. You know what? I'm going to go back, buy this, replay all of it. Why not? Let's give it a shot, see what happened. Plus, they like tightened up Mass Effect 1 a bit. So I was like, let's see how it goes. And I did. I played through it. I played through it my way. I got through all the all the content I missed from 2 and 3. I made only slightly different decisions than I did before, not crazily different. I can't bring myself to play like a full bad guy, or like, I shouldn't say bad guy, like full renegade in it. But I was I tried to be a bit more wacky with my decisions, just to try and give myself a bit different. And I saw some stuff I didn't remember, and I saw a bunch of stuff I did like that I remembered. So it was good. And then for my own, how do I put this? Like I want to make a thesis. Oh yeah, because I had played Resident Evil 8 Village, and I think I remember me feeling very mixed about it, talking about it, or maybe that was with Paul. I was like, I feel so conflicted about Resident Evil 8 Village. I want to go back and play some other games that like felt like they were in the same direction and see if I understand in my own head what I think of when I think survival horror and what I want that to mean, and if I'm remembering correctly. So part of that was going back and playing BioShock 1, and I know people will say, well, that's not survival horror. I'm like, it's got a lot in common with survival horror, but it's more in common with what Resident Evil 8 was doing, which was kind of skirting that line between being more of an action horror game and being a true survival horror game. Which
hasn't Resident Evil done that since Resident Evil 4? Like,
yes,
has it really even been I don't think it's been a survival horror series for like 2 decades now.
well, they started backtracking because Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, the remakes of 0, 1, and or that they didn't remake 0. Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica, 0, the remakes of 1, definitely survival horror. Remake of 2 is definitely survival horror. The remake of 3, I guess that's still survival horror. It's just because of the way that they made that game that's weird. Revelations 1, because then they made 4, and that went off the rails. It was still a really good game. It's an excellent game. And 5 also went off the rails. And then 6, we don't talk about. Revelations 1 started getting back. Revelations 2 also kind of like split the difference in a really good way, in my opinion. And then 7 was like almost a hard reboot, which was like, yes, here you go. And then 8 was like, well, okay, well, let's lean the other way now. But anyways, and we're getting way off topic here.
Yeah.
So,
well,
but let me segue.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to segue. So like Resident Evil Remake 2, Remake 3, and 8, and 7 all had demos. Crazy demos. And Capcom's been really wild with demos. Ed, do you remember how Resident Evil 7's demos went?
I don't know anything about Resident Evil 7's demos.
Okay, so here you go. Crazy. So Resident Evil 7 put out a demo that was not even like a... Well, I guess I need to go back a little bit further because there was the tech demo that they showed off as like a PS VR tech demo. And at first, they hadn't decided to commit to it being Resident Evil 7. That's what it seemed to be like as the news came out, is that they were making this game, and then people responded to it so well that they decided to turn it into a Resident Evil game. So there's that, and that's in the press demos. It was not released. That was not ever available to the public. I don't think you could download it and play it at home with the PlayStation VR. But anyways, then they released the first public Resident Evil 7 Biohazard demo, which was very much like a vertical slice of the game. And it wasn't even like, they did end up making it being like kind of a prologue, but it's so loosely tied in as a prologue that it feels like that was more of an afterthought. So you go in, you have almost zero combat. It's pretty much all exploration and atmosphere, and just these crazy weird things can happen. And you can go through multiple times and you can get like some different things happening. But then the demo felt like really incomplete. And that was on purpose, because then eventually they updated the demo, added in like a new item and something else you could find that's like connecting to it. And then I forget if they released a second demo or if they patched it a third time. I think they patched it a third time. And then you played through it, and when you played through it and beat it the right way, I think there was an extra trailer for the actual game. And then there was an item that could carry over into the main game, which it wasn't much. It was like an upgrade point. You got an extra skill point, which cool, whatever. That's what it turned out to be. But it was like something that captivated people for months because people were like, this is so wild. It was very much like after the whole PT phenomenon. So a lot of people were like, this is very PT-esque. There's layers, there's things to uncover. What does this mean? How's this going to tie into the final game? And it kept people engaged for a long time. And that was done really well. Then Capcom got really weird with its demos. And have you heard, Ed, about what happened with Resident Evil 2's, 3's, and 8's demos?
No, I didn't follow that.
Okay, so all three of those demos had the same gimmick, which everyone hates universally, but they play it.
Is that the one where it was only like available for like a certain amount of time?
You literally can only play your demo one shot for whatever the time amount was per account. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I did hear about that.
Yeah, it's that style makes zero sense, especially since the packages for the games, the demos, like in terms of file size, were like it was like the small slice of the game. And you could play, maybe Resident Evil 2's was a bit bigger, but no, that had a hard cutoff. That had a hard cutoff. That's the thing though, is it like it's so stupid. So what a bunch of like streamers and some users did was, and even I did, because I could play it on PlayStation and I could play it on Steam on my PC, was like people played it on multiple platforms and they would just play it and explore and do that. And it just was so weird that they did that. And they did it 3 times for 3 different games over the course of, I think, 2 years, because 2, then 3, then 8. Yeah. So over all that release period. And 8's was even weirder because they did a 2-part demo where they did it once on like, they had to deal with PlayStation. So they did it like on PS4 and PS5. And then, and 8 also had 2 demos. They did one little separate demo, which took you through a different part of the game as a different character. And it was more like a stealth thing, just like a straight up horror, no survival aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Then they released like an actual demo, which was a slice of the game. And it was just a little portion of it. And they said, okay, you're going to be in this portion of the game and you're going to actually be playing. And you only get like 30 minutes or something like that to play on this day and time. Then on this day and time, here's the second portion for 30 minutes. And then on this day and time, everyone on every platform can play up to 30 minutes in either, or for an hour in either section of the demo. And it's just, so Capcom's been putting out trials, which I applaud them for. I appreciate that. But the style, they also did, Capcom's also been weird. They're great. They're a great example for this thing of like what not to do. Don't put time limits on your thing. Nintendo also did this on Switch. Switch, maybe also Wii U. Oh no, they definitely did it on 3DS as well. Do you remember?
Yeah, there was. I think I remember like the Bravely Default demo could only be launched like a number of times.
Exactly. Yes, limited number of times for a demo launch.
But it wasn't like time played. It's you could only launch the game. I think it was like 30 times. Like it wasn't a small amount.
It was like
but it was
20
still,
or something. Yeah.
It was still weird.
Yeah, it's weird. There's no need to do that. Don't do that. Like that's not the point of your demo. Your demo is to let people try it and be sold on it. But if you put these extra limitations on it, people are going to think about it more. And they're not going to think about it in the terms of, because they might be like, well, I want to play so many times. I feel like it creates more of a stigma of there's something weird about this game that's like, why do you have to put this limitation on? When it's really like, well, we want people to get, we don't want people to keep playing the demo and not buy the main game. I'm like, if you put in a small enough chunk of the game to tease people, like they're gonna have to, or put in the right portion, put in a fun portion. And this is where Capcom has also come back, and I think Monster Hunter World, I forget if Monster Hunter World had a demo, but Monster Hunter Rise did have a demo, and they did a really good demo for that. I didn't play it, but from all the people that I heard who are Monster Hunter fans who played it, they loved it. They thought it was great. So, yeah, like it's not hard. Just put out an unlimited demo that's a small chunk of the most fun part of the game in some way, and
Well, is it really not? I don't know how much effort it is. I'm not a developer, so I don't know if we can say that it's not hard. Maybe it is kind of hard to make a demo that is representative of a game, but also appealing and sells the game. Like there's probably some level of art to getting that right, to where you have a high conversion rate, which is, I'm sure that's a metric they might look at. I'm sure they can tell if you downloaded the demo and if you downloaded the game or bought the game.
You're absolutely right. So let me rephrase that. It's not hard to know how you should make a demo, because it's clear. Like it's not a mystery what's right and what's wrong when it comes to a demo.
It's probably easy to know what not to do. I'll agree with that.
Yes.
Like the list of things to what not to do is pretty clear.
I have two great examples, one of which you'll know, which reference back to something you mentioned, and this ties into it. So I played and beat The Evil Within 1, and that game significantly disappointed me. But then I heard The Evil Within 2 was way better. I'm like, okay. And I was about to rent it, I believe. I was about to rent it on Gamefly. And then I saw it had a Steam demo. And I'm like, all right, let's play it. It was also full price still. It was a full $60, even like months after the release, which surprised me. And then I found out the demo is you can play up to chapter 3 of the game. And then at that point, hard cut or hard stop. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And I played it. And it's literally just the full game. You play up to 3 chapters, and then when you hit that checkpoint, it tells you to continue, you have to buy the full game. And then your progress carries over into the full game. And I did. I bought the game. I played through it. I played through the rest, picked up right where I left off, and it was a great experience. I thought it was a much better game. I think the Evil Within formula is still a little weird in terms of that, but it's much better than the first one. And it was very fun. I enjoyed it, but way better story. And yeah, like that was a great trial demo experience for me. And then there was Neo, The World Ends With You, which Square Enix has been doing this a little bit more with its games that it's been demoing, which is it puts out like a chunk of the game. That's usually the opening prologue, and then you get to play it for like, I think it was the opening 2 hours of Neo, The World Ends With You, and then you got to carry over that progress into the main game. I love that. That's great.
They did that for Dragon Quest XI too.
Great. And didn't they also do it for, was it Bravely Default or Octopath Traveler?
Maybe Bravely Default. I don't remember.
Bravely Default 2 specifically.
With like Bravely Default 2 and Octopath Travel, and also with the upcoming Triangle Strategy, I think they also they had a big they had a survey that people could fill out. So part of the reasons they put out these early demos was to solicit feedback from users and use it to improve the game.
Yes, which they've also done with Triangle Strategy.
Yeah.
So while it does, once again, it intertwines, like the betas and stuff. So I think that's good. I think it's a great idea to put those out, let people play them. Square Enix also did that recently with the upcoming sort of weird remake of Final Fantasy 1 that is Final Fantasy Origins.
Stranger of Paradise?
Yeah, Stranger of Paradise.
Or Strangers of Paradise, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, close enough. People can Google it. You can Google it and there. But yeah, like I played the first demo. We meant to play the second one, which apparently was better, but not much. So hopefully they're taking that. And also Koei Tecmo, because Koei Tecmo's developing that, and Square Enix is like co-developing and publishing it. Is they're working on that because it's very much like a Souls-ish Neo-like game. So it makes sense that they're working on it rather than one of Square Enix's main teams. And it's just. I think it's good. I think that's good to put it out, get some play test, understand, get some perspective on where you're getting things right, where you're getting things wrong. That's also kind of the reason why I want to go back and play like BioShock 1, Dead Space 1, and Dead Space 2, and kind of check myself on what's in my head versus what's actually out there. But yeah, I like that. I like that a lot, and I love the beta periods. Anything that lets me try a game to see if this is good or not. Now, of course, the flip side is that sometimes you try something and you don't like it, and then you lose a sale. But I think that's the most consumer-friendly thing, because you can't be sure if you're going to like something until you've actually like tried it. And I think it's kind of a jip. Well, it's not an insignificant amount of money for $60 for like big AAA games, especially when some of them will do like additional monetization and they do some really terrible, shady stuff.
I mean, I feel it's counterproductive though. Like a publisher should want people to like the game they bought. Like they
Agreed.
it doesn't make sense to want to like dupe your customers into playing a game that they don't like, because ideally you want to keep a series going if it's successful. So like, why would you want to attract a bunch of customers who are going to hate your game and not buy any DLC, not buy any sequels? I mean, they should want the people who buy the game to be the ones who like the game.
Agreed. So actually, very relevant information here, Ed. I want to toss it to you so you can tell a little story. I want you to talk about how your feelings with Shin Megami Tensei 5, where that's led to you with the idea of the trials and stuff. Because a question I'm posing to you is, as I was touching on the price of buying a game or fully investing without a trial or something, is like, you're a deal hunter. When do you feel not gypped? At what price point do you feel like not gypped, or where you're like, I don't need to try this, I'll just pay the price that it is, like, and if I like it, I like it. If I don't, whatever, it's disposable or something like that. So, yeah, go ahead and talk about that.
Well, I was pretty excited about this game because I had played or was playing Persona 5 Royal. That was kind of like my first taste of Megami Tensei, is I guess is what they call it. And I was excited because I wasn't really like thinking about Shin Megami Tensei 5 until I saw it at E3 this year, and I was really impressed with the way it looked. And I had known a little bit about the battle system, because as I began to play Persona, I got more curious about the other games in that umbrella. And I had pre-ordered the special edition because I got caught up in the hype, and I played it for about 4 or so hours, maybe 5 hours, and I just stopped because the performance of the game was really bad enough that it was really affecting my enjoyment of it. And the frame rate was bad, the draw distance was poor, there's a lot of pop in and weird stuff with animations and textures loading, and just it just yeah, I don't know if I'm that qualified to go over the performance issues, but they're well documented, and I they're bad. And it was enough where I was like, there's rumors of it coming to PC or PlayStation 4, and I figured I'll wait and see. Or maybe there will be an upgraded Switch next year that a patch will let it run better. I have so many games right now that I want to play that do run at acceptable or excellent performance. So I don't want to spend time on this game and have a subpar experience, because it's not going anywhere. I already have the game, so either I play that one when I have a Switch that can run it at a decent frame rate, or I wait until it gets ported. Um, and I guess if it doesn't in the next few years, maybe I'll grit my teeth and go back to it and deal with the bad performance. But right now, the possibility of a Shin Megami Tensei 5 version that runs well is enough for me to wait and see. And really, had I known all that, I probably wouldn't have bought the game, and I probably would have waited. Um, so I was kind of frustrated about that, but I don't know. I guess I learned my lesson with that. And, I might not try it in the future, but I certainly these kind of performance issues really, they don't always mention them in reviews,
No, they
and
don't.
it's really frustrating because like we listen to podcasts and I read stuff online, like it's it's pretty obvious. Like I don't know how you couldn't write a review and count this as a serious negative of the game. You'd have to be like willfully omitting it, so it's frustrating. No, it wasn't mentioned in a lot of reviews. I mean, I think it should have. If someone was going to give this an 8, I think they should have given it a 7, just because of the performance. I think it's that bad, and it feels like it shouldn't matter as much in a turn-based game, but it's bad enough that it does matter, which is just a testament to how poorly it runs on the Switch.
Now, do you have a rough estimate of how long you played the game before you came to your current conclusion?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it, 4 or 5 hours. I
Oh,
I
okay, yeah,
got
yeah.
I got up to the right before the first boss, and then I was about to go and like, kind of think about my team for that boss, and I was just like, I don't want to keep playing. I stopped at about 2 hours, and I was kind of like weighing my options, and then I played another 2 hours, and then I just made my decision. So
Okay, so you would say, so it sounds like, like in about 2 hours, you hit a point where you're like, you know what, I have a feeling about this game. But then you gave
yeah.
it a second shot, you pushed forward, and you're like, nope, feeling confirmed.
hmm
So now, do you think, knowing what you know now, if you would have had a demo that like covered that first 2 hours, do you think you would have said, "Oh, it's a demo. Maybe they'll fix that in the final game," or do you think you would have been convinced that that is an example of what the main game looks like?
Hmm.
While you're thinking, because I'll mention this, Hyrule Age of Calamity for or Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity for Switch did have a demo as well, and it was pretty much exemplary of what the final game was, which was the frame rate is not optimized. It's not even a solid 30, and from the streamers that I've listened to that are very candid about what the performance is like, it's it's like 15 to 20 frames per second is the average like speed at which it moves, and very rarely does it even get up to 30. And with the type of game that it is, which is a warrior style game with tons of enemies and whatnot, it's pushing it. So yeah, I think that's especially where streamers help if you're not sure about a game, especially on Switch. I think it's a little easier to go like definitely with PC, but for PS5 or the Xbox Series systems, it's or even the previous generation, you can look at a video and you can check what's the performance like. Is this moving properly? And yes, streaming quality does play into it, but there's a way to tell because if a streamer's being honest, they'll be able to mention like, "Oh, I'm feeling a certain way about this." And some people are less sensitive than others, but yeah. So, what
I
you
think it's hard to tell for me watching a video. I feel like I like a lot of people will watch like a trailer and be like, "Oh man, the frame rate was chugging there," and I
yeah,
don't know if I notice it as much until I actually play the game.
sure.
But yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah. So with the demo, do you think like if you had played like 2 hours, can you with confidence say like where your head would have been at? Would you have avoided purchasing if the demo had been that experience? The 2 hours, not the second two.
Yeah, maybe. And I think there were rumors that came out about a later port based on text that they found in certain game files, and that also kind of cemented my decision because it seems like there's a good possibility it doesn't remain exclusive to the Switch. Um, I should have listened to you. I remember way back when early on, you were saying that, oh man, that game's gonna run like crap, and you were totally right. So I'm gonna give you a point there, like
Thank you.
that. Yeah, you were like that looks like a game made for PC or something. Like, didn't isn't that what you said?
Something about the quality of the video originally with the way
yeah,
things look. It was way
yeah.
too clean, and I was like, this. It kind of gave me. I'd have to go back and look at the Astral Chain trailers because that's the one where I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to play that at 60 on Switch. I can't believe they got that to 60 on Switch. They didn't. They got it to 30. It ran pretty decently. I'd say it was for the most part 25 to 30 FPS, but it definitely was pushing what the Switch can do, and that was an optimized game. Um, but yeah, it was ugh. It just you start getting a feed for it, and I thought they would have announced it for PlayStation 4, and I just recently was alerted to that it's actually an Unreal Engine 4 game.
Yeah.
So that's still a relatively new engine, and not only for the developers but also for the industry at large. So
But Dragon Quest XI was on Switch, and I think that was rebuilt in Unreal Engine 4 or like a later like I don't know which version of Unreal Engine 4 Atlas used, because I guess like I think my understanding is like there's a later version that runs better on the Switch, and I guess you don't know how skilled the developers are in
that's what
optimizing,
I was just gonna say. Is that's a little apples to
they
oranges.
come from 3DS and DS games. Like every Shin Megami Tensei game besides like Nocturne on the PS2 before, since Nocturne up to 5 have been on DS and 3DS handhelds. So like they're handheld developers.
Also, the Dragon Quest team is umpteenth times larger than the Atlas team. Period.
Yeah.
So
They're a small company. They're like 300 employees, the company.
for Atlas,
I don't think they're more than 300 employees. I think I was just reading this a moment ago.
yeah, and they're
Before
like, yes, they're owned by Sega, but Sega's also like a second tier company that's had lots of issues with having development resources for what games it makes, other than Yakuza. But that's a game that's made at a certain scale, locked in, and they just focus on quality over time. And that's where you get like even the latest one, Like a Dragon, where like there's a lot of quality in that game, but they also chose not to do full active time combat, which I can imagine probably saved them some development time as well. And they put a lot of content into those games.
you mean they made the smart choice to do turn based? They made the right choice.
So we're gonna keep
Is that
talking
what-
about trials, rentals, and demos, and not.
Yeah, well, I wish I wish I had had a demo or something for Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Yeah,
I'm upset about it,
but
but
yes, but
I'm playing something else.
that's where also we were talking about. You can rent games. That is a physical edition, so you could. I don't know if there's any physical rental places around you these days. And I've told you, and I've said on
I
the
don't think
podcast.
I don't think they exist. Redbox doesn't have games anymore.
Oh,
Does
geez.
Redbox even exist anymore? I remember
Yes.
like a few years Redbox was like selling all their games, because I remember seeing on like the deal subreddits like, oh, you can get like all these games for cheap at Redbox, because they were just having a fire sale on all their discs.
Yeah.
I guess because people would like steal them. They would peel labels off the disc and like stick them in.
Yep.
They were a high value item, so
Games are
people were
expensive.
incentivized to steal them. Yeah.
Video games are expensive, so if you can take that disc and there's like no watching, like Redbox is just losing money off that.
Yeah.
So that's the like cycling back. That's the thing. Like it's nice to try games, but people are also taking them because games are expensive. So I think it's important to let people be able to try to figure that out. I also say this about DLC, and that's where like with fighting games, my big pet peeve is like, especially when they do fighters as DLC in fighting games. There's no way for you to tell if you like that character or not, if you're going to play that character. So you have to sink the money in, even if you're going to fight against that character. The fact that you're not going to play it is going to feel like it's lost value to you. So it's one of those things where it's cool that they do like the free weekends and stuff, and some companies do that, some don't. Or actually, it was great, but obviously they were losing money on it. Arxis for a couple of their games actually did like, hey, if you can for the first 2 weeks you can claim the character, and you'll do that. And I'm not sure how that panned out. I assume it just meant they lost a lot of money. Is that people would claim those characters and then they wouldn't purchase, they'd stop purchasing other characters. Like, why would I pay for characters? So that's where I think it gets tricky. And I think that's why a lot of the companies also try not to do rentals and stuff. And we've talked about this a little bit, is like rentals doesn't really benefit the companies long term because they don't make any money off the rental. They'll make money off the whatever number of copies that a rental store buys, but that might be for like a popular game, maybe like 10 copies. And then that those 10 copies get rented out, so many times more than that. And then, but the company doesn't see any of that. It's the same thing with used game sales. The GameStop buys its allotment, or any retail store buys its allotment of copies, which is much higher than a rental store. And then they charge the price for the game, or if the game gets returned, then that copy. And you can even trade in games from other stores. So like you can buy something from Walmart and take it to GameStop, etc., or vice versa if Walmart had a used game policy. I don't think they do use games currently. And that's suddenly a copy that GameStop never had, and then that they can resell that disc without cutting in the company on any of that. And we were talking about it before.
What's crazy is they could make money on rentals.
Right.
Like I can go to my Apple TV, rent a movie on iTunes,
Yes.
watch it once, or I can buy it. It's not an either or proposition for
Right.
digital movies. So why is it for digital games? I mean, I can imagine a world where maybe they don't want to let me rent it for, maybe I rent it for 2 hours for $5 and $10. And maybe they have a policy like Gamefly has where if you actually like it, you just pay amount to keep it. So
Yeah.
like they could be making money from people who don't even like their game. That I don't know. It seems very short-sighted that they aren't willing to figure out some sort of scheme for that.
I agree, and we've seen glimpses of it, but it just never seems to take hold as a standard. Because then there are like the exclusive demos and betas you get for like being subscribed to PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live that happen on occasion. Those are pretty cool.
Nintendo Switch Online occasionally has like a free weekend for a game where you can basically play it as much as you want for that weekend.
Yep, that's pretty cool. So having those kind of things is great. And then, so we've seen that, which is good. We also see Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Now, allowing you to be subscribed, and you have access to a library of hundreds of games, and you can play it as much as you want or as little as you want, and you just try other games, but you're paying that monthly fee to have access to that library. So that's kind of the new fashion of renting. Other than, and I think Gamefly's model is still good, and they just, they still run the same risk as like Netflix did with its disc model, where they're still using an honor system to send someone a copy of a game. The only difference there being is that it's an account system. So if someone has signed up with a legit credit card and whatnot, and the game doesn't come back within a certain period of time, or if you stop your subscription but still have a game registered as out, they can try and like charge you and stuff like that. I've never done that because I actually like the service and keep using it over months. So I'm not familiar with all that. And clearly Gamefly hasn't had enough problems to go out of business. They're still around. So there's value in it. Now the only thing I'd say is the weakness, and I don't know if they do this, is if Gamefly had a deal with the publishers and developers or whatever their vendors are for those copies of games to get a kickback whenever those games go out, then it would be much more beneficial, because then, someone tried how many people tried our game? We got a little bit of money off of that. And then how many people converted? Like, that's important. Whereas right now, the only data that I'm aware of that I can give any of those companies is that I put a disc in my system, and it registered that I put that disc in my system. I played it for however long, and then it disappeared. And perfect example right here, I mentioned this one before, was Celeste. I played through it on Game Pass because it was a shorter game. So I just played through it on Game Pass, then I bought a Steam copy. But my Steam copy has no time played on it because the whole point was I played it one place, I beat it on the other.
Yeah.
Then, for another example similar to this, I played an indie survival horror game called Tormented Souls. I played it a bunch on my PlayStation 5, and then and I realized I like this game. I'm probably really close to the end. I'm going to beat it. Oh, it's on Steam. So I'm just going to stop here. And I definitely put in like 5 hours. So I stopped, returned it, went to Steam, and then replayed my 5 hours plus like another 6 hours, whatever it was, to beat the game. And then I even put in my Steam library, like, hey, this actually took me more time because I rented on Gamefly and then bought it here. So I actually put that in my review to mention, like, this game is short. It's survival. It's like Resident Evil style survival horror length short, but not. But actually, it took me way more time to beat this because it was tricky with some of the puzzles and some of the combat encounters and stuff like that. So the amount of time it can take and all that, I'd really just like them to get more data. And it's also where I almost want to just do an episode just talking about the whole concept of voting with your wallet, because I think it's so messy, and I think I've brought it up before.
That's a good one. I'll be in on that one.
Yeah, because voting with our wallets, the way stuff goes now, it's very binary. And just
it's like real voting. Your vote barely matters. Like,
there's no nuance to it, other than when they add in more purchases. So it's like, okay, we marketed this game. What part of the marketing? Sometimes there's surveys and stuff, and you can fill that in, but it doesn't let you it's almost like you need that survey when you're buying it. You need to be able. It'd be great, like, oh, you're buying this. Could you please fill out this user survey about why you're buying this? What caused you to buy it? Cool. And then go back for that. Now, Nintendo, I think, was doing like surveys with that for some of the games. I remember filling out a couple on Switch games. And I remember, and I think they stopped doing this, or they're just not sending them to me anymore, was like, I would always say, like, for some of the games, like, yo, you need to fix the frame rate. You need to fix the frame rate. Like, this is terrible. I will not play this game. You need to fix the frame rate, especially with the surveys for the demos. One of the games was Daemon Ex Machina. I was really excited for that. That game didn't quite play the way I thought it would, but I ended up playing a bunch of it with co-op on rental, and then I waited for it to finally go on sale on Steam. It went on sale on Steam, and then it went. They put it on Steam for you to buy. And then they were charging you $60 for that game. I'm like, I'm not paying $60 for that game. And I waited, and then finally it was at a reduced price, and it was like the only time it's ever been a reduced price since it came out. So I bought it. I actually bought it for me and for my cousin that I'd been playing with it, because I'm like, here, you like this game too. We had a blast. This is as cheap as it's gonna get. So there you go. I got 2 sales. I think my cousin actually bought it on Switch, and I only rented it because I was not confident that the Switch performance would be good, and I was right. So. Yeah, that's the thing. It's the paying there's no way to also say like, hey, I think this game's pretty good, but there's some things I want you to do with this game that are good or better. Because once you pay the money, they don't have to care about what you do or don't like. Now, a lot of games are collecting like telemetry data to see how players are playing the game, and then using that to figure out whether or not what keeps people engaged, what are people enjoying with. I think Tales of Arise definitely has that going on in it, and so I'm always curious. And definitely the Resident Evil games have that stuff. But this is where, and I really want to talk about Resident Evil a bunch, because is whatnot, but trying to stay on topic. I could talk about Resident Evil for probably like 3 episodes straight if I really wanted to. And me and Paul already did record a couple episodes like that. So, yeah, going on it. I think that's why I don't really feel bad about trials. We need return policies. That's another thing. Part of the reason
I think, well, I was going to mention return policies just because I think the problem of not knowing why someone didn't like a game could be easily solved with a return policy. Why did you return it? Poor performance, bad online. Like, there's like 5 reasons they could put, and then they would know exactly what they did wrong, but they'd rather just stick their fingers in their ears and be willfully ignorant or just disingenuous about why their game is bad.
Yeah, I also am afraid of like some feedback, and I'm not saying this is like a real bad thing. It's just one thing we have to worry about is also there's people who could buy it where it could be, oh, I thought this was going to be an RTS and it's not an RTS. And then they return it. And then what signal does that send? Because, I mean, this industry has, the AAA industry has homogenized itself in terms of gameplay. Ubisoft's doing all the open world stuff. Tons of other companies do a bunch of huge open world games. And it's weird, like, despite the incredible success that some of Nintendo's first-party games and Sony's first-party games, which are not open-world games, are doing, that we just don't see as many third-party games attempting it as much. And I mean, I hear it with other on podcasts where they nail it on the head. The amount of money you can make from the other games, the service-type games or something like that, is too good to not try to do. Because if you land it, you make huge amount of bucks, and if you don't, then oh well, you try it with the next one, because as soon as you nail it, it's worth it. And the other part is those companies are all very short term, being like, I want all the money, I don't want just some of it, which is where we see this like dearth of creativity in the AAA space, and the indies are making up, and why we still have this gap of quality, although indies are catching up, thankfully, because of the tools and the resources, and it becoming easier to make higher quality stuff on a lower budget, is the same thing. Like, why we don't see I'm gonna gush about Guardians of the Galaxy on the Game of the Year episode. Whether or not that's my Game of the Year right now, I'm not spoiling, I'm just saying I will be gushing about it. Is that was very much like an Uncharted, Last of Us, like these linear action style games, even Ratchet and Clank, and I'm getting ready to play at some point Rift Apart and Ratchet 1, and I'm going to play them back to back on my PlayStation 5, is those types of games we just don't see as many anymore or as widespread in third parties. And I want to see like like EA. I don't know what EA is doing. Other than EA did okay. EA let one through, which was the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and that game's really good. And it needed some more polish to it, but otherwise it was really good. And actually, I would say Jedi Fallen Order is very much in the same vein as Guardians of the Galaxy. They're both extremely pleasant surprises that just end up being like, this is, yeah, you should make more of these. These are really good. And you should not be afraid or be so frugal about being like doing your big Battlefront multiplayer service game and your single player action focused game like your Jedi Fallen Order. Like, they can coexist. You can do both. And when they're good and people can trust that they're going to be good, you sell more copies. Like, games sell. Like Horizon Zero Dawn although that's an open world, so that's actually kind of a bad example.
Well, and especially it's like they have all these developers and they know what they've done. They know what they're good at. Yet Square Enix, what did they put? Crystal Dynamics on Avengers, right? That was the developer that did Avengers, and it's
that was a mismatch.
You know, they'd rather just put all their resources on these possible live service hits.
Yeah, and I think Avengers has a good model. It's just the problem is they didn't get enough time to make that game. It was a team that wasn't familiar with how to make that, and I think what they did, the core of that game is fun in concept, and then they just didn't get enough time to polish it up and make it as good as it needed to be. And that's very sad. I think it's great that they've added as much as they have. Like, adding all the characters for free is great, and also the story campaign stuff is great, but they just don't have the money and stuff they need for all those assets. And I don't know when they're going to stop with that one, because I feel there's going to have to be a hard cutoff. I feel like that game's going to sunset. They're going to hit a story chapter and be like, okay, we're kind of like the way Destiny 1 to Destiny 2 had to be, where they're just like, we're hitting limits on engine. We're going to have to just kind of do a hard reboot here and make a sequel on and do a sequel type thing.
So where did we get to complaining about like AAAs and games as a service from demos and rentals?
These are the reasons why we have to why it's a good idea to be able to try stuff, and why companies are fighting against themselves in the pursuit of all the money instead of just settling for less money, because they could be making more money if they partnered with these like we said, Game Pass and PlayStation Now are the subscription services. If Gamefly actually had deals to send some money back to those copies, also the voting with your wallet. So that's where we were. It's a hodgepodge of concepts here.
We went way down this path and I got lost.
So yeah, we were talking a little bit about this just before we started recording, so I'll bring it up here to get us back on track. In the heyday of Xbox 360, Xbox Live, they pretty much like promised just about every game on Xbox 360 and Xbox Live would get a demo, and it did, and just about everyone did. I think it was more not having a demo was more an exception to the rule, and it was great. I don't know exactly what happened there, other than they probably just said like people are either A, maybe not enough people are playing demos, or B, they were seeing less sales from games with like bad demos, which happens. And that's the thing, is it can be tricky to make a demo and for it to be good. Some games don't demo well, and that's a problem. And some games, they just don't demo the game well, even though there is a portion of that you could demo properly. So that's another thing. And I'm not saying it's easy. That part I wasn't trying to say was easy. But I think in general, it has led that we're seeing more of a resurgence now. But they figured out a way to monetize it. So actually, I wanted to kind of shift from that, because there's the subscription service, which makes a lot of sense. And then they sign the deals. Those companies get a certain amount of money, whatever that deal is, based on letting their game be on the service. Apple Arcade does the same thing. Do you know?
Yeah, I actually tried a bunch of games when I had Apple Arcade earlier this year. Some of them I liked, some of them I finished, some of them I didn't.
Isn't Apple Arcade games, though, what's the deal? Do you know what the deal is that Apple makes with the studios?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know if anyone knows exactly what deal they make with studios, but some of them stay exclusive, some of them But I don't think Apple Arcade games ever leave the service. At least I don't think any have. I think all the ones I've added since the beginning are still there. So I think they specifically try to curate games for their service, but it's not like they're paying for a limited time contract like Game Pass does with their third parties. And they do so I don't know, maybe they do bankroll all these games themselves. They do deals and they pay for them to be made, or because some of them are original games and some of them and that are only available on Apple Arcade, at least until they maybe make it to Switch or PC. Um, but some of them are just like premium version of a game that normally is free to play, where they kind of take out all the grind and make it a little more pleasant because you're paying for it.
What I was trying to figure out, and I'm trying to Google on my phone right now, but I don't have enough to go off the company. Was like, what is Apple doing for its profit share for in games? And I thought I remember I couldn't remember if it's about the number of times played or the amount of time played. Because that's another issue there too, is that some games are, especially indie, are shorter games that aren't meant to be played for very long, and you get the full experience, maybe a couple hours, if that, and that's it. Or it's like a really small experience, like like a Tetris style thing. Like it's a multi-session game where you just keep going back and replaying it, and may play it a ton, you may not play it a ton, or something like that. So
Do you think they're performance based pay models, or is just a I don't know. I don't know
we'd
if
have to look it up.
I
We don't know. I
yeah,
don't know.
I don't think we can know. I don't know if those contracts are going to be public or those terms, but
Some of that information's
maybe
out
someone will
there,
talk about it.
or
Yeah.
rough stuff. Yeah, we'd have to Google around to
Yeah.
it, because like I think because people were talking about it, like the difference between Apple Arcade's deals with the developers and publishers, and the way Game Pass was doing it, and whose is better or what makes more sense, because these models can lead to that. And I was listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about how this might be leading the subscription models might be leading to a teaching consumers to not buy games, which I think isn't a good idea. But then again, as we've also brought up previously, we don't really get to own our games anymore. Even when you buy a disc, you're just buying a disc with a license code on it. And yes, it has data on it, but it's less about the terms of service is less about that you are buying a product that you own, and more like, hey, we're kind of giving you the privilege. You paid $60 for the privilege to play with this data as long as we determine that that's okay. So that's the issue there. So I guess
Well, doesn't Microsoft say that Game Pass subscribers spend more on games? They buy games as they're leaving the service. They buy DLC for the games on the service. Like, it doesn't seem like it's a subscriptions and actually purchasing games are mutually exclusive.
I actually haven't seen any articles like that, but
That's what I recall them saying is, and um like a lot of people who bought Forza Horizon or got Forza Horizon 5 are buying the DLC for that, or the fact that they give you a discount, a higher discount on the game as it is leaving the service. So if you're still playing it, you want to buy it, or if you want to keep playing it after it leaves the service. So I think people who subscribe to Game Pass do still end up spending money on games.
I'm not saying they don't. I just don't know what the exact numbers are, and
Yeah.
I would love that to be the positive correlation, so they could take it away. And the only thing I could think of, or I shouldn't say that. Let me rephrase. What I could think of as a reason why, even though it's profitable and it leads to higher attach rates or more people getting that stuff, is because, or it becomes a problem, is that once again it's the wanting all the money issue. Is that these companies go, well, yeah, sure, okay, they're buying DLC, they're buying the game uh, at a discounted price, but they could be paying full price and buying our DLC, and we could not be giving Microsoft that much of a cut or whatever. So we could be making more money if we didn't do it by partnering with them instead of making some money. And it's like, that's what it feels like. That's what it seems.
Yeah.
It
I
seems
don't
like
know. It's a new model. We don't
it
really
is.
know. Like I was gonna mention it, but yeah, now's as good as time as any. Is that there were rumors that Sony was going to revamp their service offerings, and
Yeah.
I
Finally.
yeah, I think yeah. Well, I don't. Basically, it was there were going to be three tiers. They were getting there. Well, this isn't finalized. This isn't like for sure,
No, yeah,
but
this was just like a
this
leak.
is what I think that what Bloomberg was
Yeah,
reporting.
Bloomberg's insider leak reporting.
Yeah, but we all remember Bloomberg's report on the Switch Pro. They got most of it except for the fact that it wasn't a Pro. Um, but yeah, it was 3 tiers. The getting rid of the PS Now branding with PS Plus being the base tier. And in higher tiers, they were going to offer like extended demos as a possible option. They might offer back catalog stuff like with PS Now, maybe older games from PS1, 2, and 3, and PSP. So it sounded like it includes a lot of the things that are, or it could potentially be kind of a combination of services, kind of somewhat of a Game Pass, but I doubt they're going to do day one first party exclusives,
Yeah.
and somewhat of a Nintendo Switch Online, kind of leaning into their legacy catalog. So, I you know me, I've kind of come around on subscriptions in terms of what they offer being a a decent value. Although I haven't been playing my Xbox much lately, so I got Game
Right,
Pass
right.
still. But I can see where depending on what they offer, but it's not just going to be about catalog. It sounds like it's kind of about like features too, because like getting an extended demo is kind of like a feature. That's not just the game you're getting access to. If that can be a general feature for most games as part of a subscription, I think that's a lot a big source of value.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good idea to just make it more easier for people to play games and more affordable to try them or play them in some regard and meet the consumers at all their different levels of disposable income. That's I've been seeing arguments before about this. Now, some of it's been phrased as race to the bottom, especially in the mobile side with all the free to play games and the way that's gone. But also, there's been some philosophical debate about like letting people be able to access art regardless how much money they have, because it's almost becomes a thing where we're trying to democratize art, and that's fine. I think that's good. But it's the idea of also, well, what do you do to how do you pay for it? Because people still need to make a living, which I one my goal in thinking is just about where's that compromise, and that's why I talk about if only these companies would actually compromise and be like, okay, you can have a business model off this, and we can still get a kickback in some way because it benefits both of us. Because ultimately, then we've got more people investing into our business, little bits more money. We like that's the microtransaction. That's what it should be. Um. So Ed, yeah, I wanted to ask you like with you've more recently come across Game Pass. So like have you played anything on Game Pass that has made you decide you want to purchase it, or do you feel like with Game Pass you're going to kind of commit to, hey, as long as it's there, I'm just going to play it and beat it if I can? Yeah, have you gotten that far yet?
I played and finished Psychonauts 2, and I didn't really feel a need to purchase that because that's never going to leave Game Pass. So
Hmm.
and I guess like
So in a way, you're
I,
paying
I
for it
don't
by just staying subscribed to Game Pass.
that's kind of how I figure. And
That is a first.
I think that's how Microsoft kind of views it anyway. They're using a lot of their Game Pass subscriptions to fund their first party offerings.
Yeah.
Um, I tried a couple indie. I tried Dodgeball Academia. I think
Hmm.
that's a indie game. I didn't really like it that much, so I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think I played like an hour or so.
Yeah.
Um, there's a few games that came that I want to try. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I think you mentioned Yakuza Like a Dragon. I definitely want to play that. I think the fact that it is now turn based is kind of up my alley, and I've heard good things about it. And I also want to try Scarlet Nexus. I think that came last month or maybe 2 months ago.
Hmm.
So I'll probably try to give those a shot before they leave the service. But
Yeah. Now I'm pretty much all about like trying a game, like, or if a game seems interesting, I want to try it in some regard, at some point. And the games I already know, I'm pretty confident that I'm gonna like. I'll buy. But where is your head at when it comes to determining? Because you already said like there's a lot of games you like that you just would never do trials on or don't look up too much information on. But can you articulate for us what if it's like what's the decision making between like, you know what, I think I should try this game versus no, I'm just gonna buy it. Like where's your head at? How do you make that decision?
Well, I mean, now I guess like if it has a demo or if it's on Game Pass, I'll try that. So if it's like available for me in a way that I already have to demo it, I'll check that out. But I mean, if it does, I see. I like the idea of GameFly, but I don't think I would use it on like a month to month basis to really get a lot of games to try because a lot of times I'm preoccupied with playing the games that I am currently interested in. So, I wish that Redbox or some sort of like, you know, a la carte rental option was there because I don't really want to pay what is it like $16 a month now for game or not for I already have the Game Pass. I don't really want
17, I
to
believe, for one
yeah.
month now.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
one
I
game at
don't
a time per month.
yeah, I don't want to double that for the occasional rental. But um I don't know. I do try a game when I can, but it's not always available as a demo or on Game Pass. So I guess if I had those options, I'll give it a shot. Otherwise, I'm just kind of making an educated guess. And I will say, like the list of games that I have tried and not ended up finishing is not that long. So I'm usually pretty good at at judging whether or not I'm going to enjoy a game. Um, so I can't say that it's been too bad.
Mm. So yeah, but do you feel like so then do you feel like you're gonna change your habits at all, or do you think like you're gonna try to do more trials of games as you find new ones that you're excited about, or do you think you're gonna stick with your current mindset, or are you going the other way?
I guess it depends on I don't know what options there are. Like if Sony actually comes out with a service that has extended demos and it's pretty wide, it's across a wide portion of their catalog. If not, then yeah, I think I could switch to. I just I well I don't know. It depends. I guess I don't know. There's not even that many games I can think about coming out next year that I'm like, I want to try. So it's kind of a problem I don't have right now. This year had a lot of games coming out in series that I was already a fan of. Like I think I mentioned all the games that I had bought that I didn't really do a demo on because I knew I was going to play them anyway. So most of the new games I've played this year, other than Shin Megami Tensei 5, have been kind of a known quantity to me. So I haven't really had the dilemma of like, am I really going to like this? But I think Shin Megami Tensei 5 is one where I probably should have because I hadn't played one before. So yeah, I don't know. You convinced me to get Game Pass, so maybe I'll break down and get GameFly too. At least for maybe I'll try it for a few months to see.
Yeah, it's certainly useful because Game Pass is only for Xbox and PC, whereas
Yeah,
GameFly would let you try PS5 games, try Switch games, also Xbox games,
Xbox.
because you
Yeah.
actually have like all three platforms currently.
Hmm.
So that would cover that ability and would feed into, um, or not feed into, but it would cater to your ability to figure out whether or not you like games or which platform to get it on. Although with Game Pass, yeah, like it's I don't know, based on what your interests are, there will be games you may or may not be able to get because it has to be a physical edition, which is slightly more rare now than digital because every game comes out digitally now. There's no games that come out exclusive only, physical only. Excuse me.
Yeah, a lot of indie. Not every indie game gets a digital or physical release.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Like we were talking about renting, like Apple offers like for movies and stuff. You can rent and pay a little price for a rental period. PlayStation Now does offer with streaming a rental price. I think they're still doing that. They may have taken that down, but I remember they were trying
I
to
don't
figure it
think
out.
I don't think they do anymore. I think it's just a subscription,
Yeah,
but I could be wrong.
that's where like streaming I think makes a lot of sense is like solving an issue of like how do you let people if you're worried about people pirating a game and not wanting to be able to download the full thing but at least want to be able to sample a game in some way. I think streaming does make sense for that. Although the problem is streaming's technical issues still don't reflect poorly on whether or not the game actually plays well and has real performance issues or not. Um, It'd be nice if, like, I mean, Microsoft has foot the bill for a bunch of development when it comes to like the Xbox backwards compatibility. So it'd be nice if they also, like, them and Sony, but Microsoft does have more money than Sony does. So it'd be
And
great.
they're like more of a tech company too. I think they probably have like the technical chops to do all that, real hard engineering stuff more than Sony does.
Yeah, I meant just more like footing the bill for like developing, like, hey, please make a demo for our platform, or make the
Oh, I
demo.
thought you were talking about backwards compatibility.
No, yeah, separate thing. I was talking about like being able to make a demo or a trial. So you know what? I had some like weird ideas because I've tossed it around in my head because the free to play model is clearly like exists, and it's a method. We've talked about how it's great with the trials where, hey, you can try the game the first couple hours of the game and then your progress carries over to the main game. What if there's like a kind of like, I think back to the old arcade style, and I wonder if there's any sort of future for that model of like kind of a pay as you go. Now, some games have tried to experiment with episodic models, such as like the Telltale games, but that was a bit different. They're like, hey, we're promising like a complete experience, but we're going to release it in chunks. Uh, Whereas I'm thinking more of like the game is out, and then what if we let you download just a little bit? They'd still have to design the game in chunks, and not tons of games are designed. That's the other thing. It's kind of antithetical to like the open world design, because open world is meant to be like one giant stage, and then you just play through things. But there's still like progression blockers. It's not completely available. Open worlds aren't completely like at your disposal. So what do you think about that, Ed? What's your gut reaction if I said, hey, this game's coming out? I'm trying to think what could I use as an example? Let's say next Ratchet and Clank was like, hey, $2 to play the first 2 stages of the game, and then if you like it, the next the next stage is only like 99 cents or something like that, or the next stage, and each stage is like 99 cents after. Now that doesn't add up to the $60 price point in general, but like, what's your gut reaction?
I'd probably just buy the whole thing because I know I like Ratchet and Clank.
Okay.
But I say that now, and then there's probably going to be some day where I feel completely burned. But I've played some bad Ratchet and Clank games and still enjoyed them. Like,
Right.
I played All for One on the PS3, and I still had fun with that. It wasn't great, and I played, I think, there were these short ones in between a few of the games. It was Quest for Booty and Into the Nexus. I played both those, and those ones I had fun. So I don't know. I can't imagine a Ratchet. I think the only one I didn't play, there was one called Full Frontal Assault that had like tower defense elements to it, and I didn't buy that. So, but if it's just attrition, well, yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe if that's an option, even if it's a game I like, it would make more sense to take that opportunity to try it.
Yeah. What if let's see, because you're looking forward to Triangle Strategy on Switch. So and that one is probably going to have like stages and battles, etc., acts, whatever, full for the game. So let's say like same proposition, maybe it was $5. Let's be a little more realistic. So let's say it's $5. You get the prologue or the opening chapter, and then the second chapter. That's what $5 gets you. And then let's say it has like 12 chapters, so it'd be up to. So then each chapter after the first 2, $5 for each additional chapter. Do you think you would do that model, or like would you try that? Would you go like, you know what? Yeah, I'll just pay the $5, do the 2 chapters, and then see where it goes. Or would you just go for the full purchase, or would you, given there's no return policy, or would you go for a rental at this point with like your current experiences with Switch games?
I think I'd rather do a rental or a demo if that were an option, because the thing with buying it in chunks is, say you bought, like, depending on the pace at which you play the game, you might be able to get the game cheaper just like doing the demo, and like it could go on sale, and by the time you've bought it in these $5 chunks, you spent more in the game than you would have had you done a demo and then played it later. So like it's I don't know if the financials always make sense. Well,
but that's the risk you run, because also just like to your point, but the thing is, it's still.
I guess if you don't like it, you've wasted 40 or 60 or more dollars.
Right,
yeah,
right.
So.
Or just like we were talking about before with like schedules and time to play, or also waiting to purchase, as we were kind of talking with Shim about SMT5, is like if you pay for $60 up front, like why ever buy a game at launch? Because if you just wait, it's always going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
Like other than Nintendo games, which even still they went on sale on Black Friday, like even in the eShop too, is like if you wait, physical games definitely go on sale and digital games typically go on sale. So there's no reason to buy at launch because unless you are comfortable paying full price and don't care. Or there's like an exclusive bonus, which is very rarely that you can't like get the exclusive bonus and then buy it later or something like that. Except for the pre-orders. So that kind of stuff. So yeah, it works out either way. So I think that's actually not something to be worried about, is like, oh, it could end up costing you could have saved yourself money later. Like that's always the case.
I don't think I want to buy a game piecemeal, but I think the option I would most prefer is to be able to pay a partial, pay if they're not going to give me a demo, at least let me pay to rent it for like, I don't know, a couple of hours. Like,
Mm-hmm.
get it. Maybe you don't want to do it for free. Like, I get it. It costs money to make a demo. It it's an extra cost, which I argue they should be willing to foot. But I it would I don't I wouldn't I think if I played the first 2 hours or 2 levels or whatever and I was sold on it, I would just buy the rest of the game. I don't think I would keep buying levels, until I finish the game. I think I'd be like, all right, I'm into it, I'll buy the rest of the game.
And I wanted to ask this question. I'll just put it out to the room. I'll share my thoughts first because I don't think there's a real good answer. I don't think there's like an answer for this. It's just a scenario that has to be considered. Is like, in what increments could you distribute the game or piecemeal it? Because not all games are created with a similar progression. So it's like some games can. That's why I was trying to use the Ratchet and Clank example, because it breaks up cleanly into stages, or it can be broken up cleanly into stages.
In a way, and the latest one, you actually revisit stages and different stuff happens. So,
right, but there's clear breaks with like cutscenes and stuff.
It's a linear game.
Right,
yeah.
right. But then like open world games, it's not the same. And it's like, okay, what works better is like you get like a chunk of the game and then you get to play that chunk as much as you want, or it's like a time limit, kind of like what we were talking about but that specifically for renting rather than for a game that like you can play as much as you want. So if you speed run, you might be able to get through like half the game in that allotted time. Like for an example, a wild example. So I don't think there's a clean answer to that, but like, Ed, do you got like a gut feeling on like which you prefer? Do you like just having kind of like a time limit with as much of the game as you can play in that, or do you think like a specific chunk makes more sense than like they should really try to like just a block of content? I don't know if you have a thought or feeling.
I think for a linear game, a specific chunk makes more sense. But I guess for like an open world or some game like a fighting game or something that really comes down to the systems and isn't necessarily about the content in the same way that a linear story based game is. I don't want to feel like I have to be rushed to like I want to be able to at least make an informed decision. I don't want to have to rush. We do know the way not to do it, and that's the way Sony did with a few games this year, where they gave you a time limited demo, but they included the download time in that time that you were allowed to play.
Oh, that was such a huge mess up. That was so not nice.
So it's like if your internet's slow, oh, but my game finished downloading, but I'm past the demo time, so I can't play it at all.
Yeah, that seems like both like a bug, sort of. Like the counter didn't click on at the right time. So hopefully I think they fixed it.
I don't think it was a bug. I think it was just a dumb decision.
Probably that too. Because we're nearing the end of the episode, so I was just shoot, I had one more. I was gonna ask a question in relation to. Oh yeah, okay. So we've been talking about like trying games before you buy was basically like the point of this, and then there's like trials, there's demos, there's rentals. But there we can kind of break these down into two categories, because demos typically come out before the game, and they're a separate chunk of the game if they're done. I would say more correctly. Whereas then there's like trials, which is like a part of the full game, or like renting, which is you get to play the full game for a certain amount of time or to some restriction. You don't fully own it, like a Gamefly type thing or whatnot. So if you had to, like, what's your gut feeling about what you prefer? Do you prefer like trying a demo like pre-release and just seeing that as like a sample, or are you more in the camp of like, you know what, You'd rather wait for like for the full release and then be able to sample from that instead. Do you have a gut check on that? It seems pretty clear to me when I say it out loud.
I think I'd be more comfortable actually getting the full game, because at this point I don't trust the developers to like not try to fake you into liking it.
Yeah,
You
or
know, they
stuff gets
might
fixed or changed by the
yeah,
time the real
they
game's out.
fix
Yeah.
it, or maybe, you know, or maybe the demo for some reason runs way better than the like. Man, I'm really feeling the sting of Shin Megami Tensei 5. So
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, man. I now like I'm starting to really distrust the publishers and developers in terms of
Been
like,
telling you, man.
yeah.
And here's the thing. So like part of the reason that I'm so big on trials at this point um is because of my experience with Destiny 1. And I've definitely mentioned this on the podcast before, but I'll reiterate one last time for new listeners is I was totally buying into the hype for Destiny 1. I was looking at the media, I was watching the gameplay. I was a huge fan of Borderlands, so I thought this was just a more serious take on Borderlands. It wasn't. And I was expecting, oh, they're just hiding the story because it's going to be a huge deal. Like, this is an RPG with tons of campaign stories, yada, yada, yada. And that's not what happened. It turns out they were trying to make this games of service, semi-MMO game. And, like, the narrative was, like, secondary to everything else. And it was, I was like, gameplay solid, but there's, like, I have no motivation to play through this game. And it's so little content for what it was. And sure, it was, like, maybe 15, 20 hours, which would have been great if the campaign portion of it would have been actually fun, but it wasn't. And then it just became a pure loot grind. And I'm not actually into the loot grind. The loot grind just happens to be it just accompanies it. And like for Borderlands, it's kind of neat because the guns can be so wacky, but it's to some extent it's the progression is also. But I prefer more. I'm more in it because of the colorful characters, the interesting, unique world, and being able to play with my friends in co-op, which unfortunately Destiny just didn't have enough to be like, well, why is this fun to play when I could just go back and play Borderlands? Like, it doesn't have enough flavor to it. I'm like, what's the mystery of this world? And I'm like, by the end of that, and I realized, oh, we're gonna keep putting on expense. I'm like, no, you charge me $60, and I hate what I really am disappointed and let down by what's here. This world is not fleshed out. It is not intriguing, and I'm not going to pay you extra money. You totally like baited me into this. So that's where I'm like, you know what? From now on, I'm just going to be really skeptical, and I'm going to be more into trying games before I buy them if I have any hint of doubt, because that's, and then I fully commit, and this is a personal thing. I fully commit to try it, and I really do like it, then I'm going to buy it. And there's a couple of like Japanese games I've played through like Gamefly that I was like actually really surprised I was enjoying more than I thought I would. Like I tried the newer Sakura Wars game, and I was actually kind of really enjoying that, but I was playing that a certain way too, because it has a dating sim aspect, which I was like, I didn't really care about, and I decided to just play where I'm always going to pick this one choice as like this is my canonical character. Like they always pick this no matter what, so it wasn't me making the choice really of like, oh, what's the best thing? Because I was like, I'm not trying to pick a girl, so what just happens if this character just always makes these decisions, whether I like it or not? And it led to really comical results where the character could put its foot in its mouth, and I'm like, oh, it's a character that I'm experiencing. And then there was one other like JRPG that I was having a ton of time and a ton of fun with, and it was actually a turn-based game, and it had some like reaction elements to it, which was really nice. And just the way the protagonist like talked with the girls or about the girls and some of them, and the characters of the girls, because it was some like idol related and I forget the exact name, but it was like what if these idols were also like Power Rangers or something style thing. And I was like, this is really funny and really stupid, or it's really funny because it's really stupid. And the protagonist and I were kind of in sync on like reacting to the characters in specific ways, and I was laughing. And it ultimately I was like, you know what, the story seems meh, and it's going to probably be super fan servicey and cringy, so I'm going to just let it slide. But I don't know. Like, I'm also happy I tried those, because those were games that I would have totally never experienced and never even had the positive memories of going back to, and possibly being like, you know what, maybe at some point I will try it again, and then coming back. And that's also good. And there's also other games where I'm like, I'm not sure if there's enough here for me, and then being able to go, oh, there is. Like the Tormented Souls, I'm like, is this great? And it was. And I was like, I literally played through it again. I was like, yep, even with all the jank, even with all the stuff, and I needed a guide to finish it and whatnot. I was still glad I played it. I'm like, this is really good. I really hope this team learns from their mistakes and goes on and makes a new game. And I'm like interested. And granted, it's in a genre I like already, and there are other genres and things, but I'm experimenting with other types of games that I might have never given a chance if I didn't have these methods of trying it and being able to understand whether or not I'm invested. So I definitely think they still need to be there. There's other ways that the industry could embrace this to make it work. And I want them to get away from the disgusting habits of all the money. Like, once again, it comes down to, like, if they would just settle for less money, and they're already making enough, we know they are, then we could have some more good consumer-friendly stuff, and the gaming space would continue to grow. It's still continuing to grow, but it's growing in ways that make things that's polluting it. You know, I don't want to put all of the responsibility at consumers' feet. I definitely don't, but I do think it needs to split. Like, the industry is in charge because they make what's available, and people can only buy what's available. But people are also not, like, recognizing when stuff's bad, not putting enough, like, well, this actually means that this is terrible, and let's not do it. And I get it. Life is hard enough as it is outside of video games that you just want an escape. You just need to blow a few minutes and just unwind and not think about it. So, like, none of that is lost in me. It's just a shame that, like, we could have more nice things if everyone kind of, like, wasn't as terrible. I guess it's the story of life, right?
Yeah, what you were saying about Borderlands, I think, like, there was so much hype leading up to SMT5. They were having all these, like, demon videos every day, a new demon and new trailers, and man, they got to me. I think I guess I have to learn my lesson from that. That I think I might take away the same lesson that you did with Destiny, getting caught up in the hype, but I guess for a different reason, because it is a good game. But
Yeah.
um,
And
I
that's
I,
mhm.
I do want to say one last thing. I know
Go
we're
right ahead.
coming to a close, and that is, like, if for our listeners, if you're lucky enough, and you should try to find out, if you're lucky enough that your local public library has games to borrow, definitely check that out. My local branch doesn't, but there are ones in my state that do, and I think my hometown does too. So my sister does. She lives in Pittsburgh. The Carnegie Library System has video games to borrow, and that is, like, check that out. Wait times are always long. You're probably not going to, like, get through a big long game in the short term. They let you borrow it, but that's kind of not the point. The point is, that's another way that if you have it, I think that's a good way to try out games. I wish I had that option.
Yeah, and I recommend people try before you buy. It doesn't hurt. Don't buy into the FOMO. Make lists on your phone like I do, and just be like, oh, I like this. I'm gonna put it on my list. I'm gonna keep it there. I'll come back to it, or I'll keep an eye on it for when it's on sale and get it on a deal or something like that. And don't be afraid if you don't want to finish a game or you end up not liking it. But do try games, but do also buy games. Don't just leave it at that. Like, I've got my standing subscriptions for Game Pass and Gamefly, and I'll probably never get rid of them. I've been meaning to do PlayStation Now, but at the same time, I think that, and it's different libraries too. Some people might think, oh, you're double dipping, or you're like, isn't that redundant? And it's like, no, because they're different libraries of games. Like, there's digital games that will never have physical releases, and I'll never be able to sample those without that. And maybe some of them are cheap enough that I'll just buy that, and that's fine. And I get that everyone's at different income levels. So I'm not telling you to, like, spend money haphazardly and not pay your bills. I'm saying that to some extent, vote with your wallet is true, but in other ways, it's not as good as it's not the best way. It's not always the greatest thing, but you still should be buying games when you can. Try it, figure out if you like it, or if you're really into it. Take as much time as you need, and if you actually play through and beat a game in your rental period, like, buy the full game, or promise that you'll buy a full game. Still support the art. We still need to be sending money, especially if it's an indie game, and maybe set a rule if a game's like under $10 or something. As long as your financial situation allows it, just invest. Give those people the dollars they deserve. Find some way to contribute to those artists that are the developers of the game, because work goes into this. There are people behind the scenes doing their best to create something that hopefully people will enjoy. So shop smartly, but yeah, still don't just settle. Don't don't give in to the corporate interest of never buying games or whatnot, even though it seems really good. Like try to invest a little bit more into the art so we keep getting good stuff. So good stuff keeps shining through and beats out all the dumb regurgitated messes of like Ubisoft open world games. Hey, maybe that is your jam, and I'm not dissing you for that, but try new things too. There are so many genres of games, and you never know what's going to be special or memorable and whatnot. And take that to broaden your interest and try to figure things out. And I'm not always the best personally when it comes to that as well, but I'm trying to do a bit better, and I'm also trying to just do even offshoots of the things I like that are a little bit different to find that and to understand what I do and don't like and whatnot. So yeah, that's the message I want to leave with people today is renting's good, trials are good, demos are good. They're not always done the best way, but we need to keep those, and hopefully they'll stay around. So Ed, do you have any other final words?
No, but I will say I feel better venting about SMT5. I just like the thing.
Yeah.
I got that off my chest.
Mm,
Hopefully people will learn from my mistake.
yeah. And you're playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I can't wait till you actually finish that, and then I can vent to you, because I've been going over my thoughts in my head a bunch, and it's a complicated roller coaster ride. But yeah, so thank you again, everyone who was listening to us today, and all our past and future listeners. Like we said, the next episode will definitely be the Game of the Year episode, and we will then be taking a break, so we will miss an episode, and then come back with a brand new episode in 2022. And we haven't decided on exactly what topic. We've got some ideas, and we're kind of gonna take that time to do that. So appreciate everyone so far. Hope you're having a great holidays, and thanks again, and talk to you later.
Bye.